Excuse me. Everyone, if I could have your attention. My future mother-in-law, Patricia, stood at the head of the table. She was wearing a gold sequined dress that caught the light aggressively, looking less like a matriarch and more like a disco ball that had lost its rhythm. She held her champagne glass high, her eyes locking onto mine with a predatory glint. "I'd like to propose a toast," Patricia announced, her voice dripping with that fake sugary sweetness she reserved for public humiliations. "To my son, James, for finding a woman brave enough to marry into this family. We all know it takes a certain kind of hunger to land a Vanderbilt." The guests chuckled nervously. My fiancé, James, stiffened beside me. His hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. I didn't squeeze back. I kept my hand limp, cool, and detached. Patricia wasn't finished. She took a sip, leaving a rim of bright red lipstick on the crystal. "And to Elena," she said, pointing the glass at me like a weapon. "For proving that the American dream is alive and well. It must be so overwhelming for you, darling, sitting here. Don't worry about the bill tonight. I know a single plate here costs more than your rent. Consider it charity." The room went silent. The air felt heavy, suffocating. My cousin-in-law covered her mouth to hide a giggle. Patricia smirked, waiting for me to blush, to cry, to look down at my lap in shame. She wanted a reaction. She wanted to see the poor little mouse crumble. Instead, I picked up my own glass. I swirled the vintage Dom Perignon slowly, watching the bubbles rise. I looked her dead in the eye, and I smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile a shark gives before it drags you under. She thought she was humiliating a gold digger. She didn't realize she was declaring war on the woman who owned the bank that held her mortgage. To understand why Patricia felt comfortable insulting me in front of 50 of the city's elite, you have to understand the lie I've been living for 3 years. I'm Elena. I'm 32. To the outside world, and specifically to James's family, I am Elena the freelancer. They know I work from home. They know I'm usually on my laptop. They see me wearing simple black turtlenecks, tailored trousers, and flats. No logos. No flash. To Patricia, simple means poor. To Patricia, freelance means unemployed. She comes from old money, or rather, money that was old, until she spent most of it on cosmetic surgery and bad investments. She measures worth in volume. The louder the brand, the bigger the diamond, the better the person. She doesn't understand stealth wealth. She doesn't look at my sweater and see that it's 100% vicuña wool from Loro Piana, costing $4,000. She just sees a brown sweater. She doesn't know that the freelance consulting I do is actually me serving as the silent managing partner for Apex Capital, a private equity firm with a portfolio worth nearly $1 billion. I keep it secret for a reason. When I was 25, I sold my first tech startup. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be my friend. Everyone had a business idea. Men wanted to date me to fund their dreams. It was exhausting. It was lonely. So when I met James, I didn't say anything. I wanted to be loved for me, not my liquidity. James found out about 6 months in. He saw a bank statement I left on the counter. He nearly fainted, but he kept my secret. He loved that I was humble. He loved that we could eat pizza on the couch and ignore the noise. But Patricia? She hated me on sight. From the moment James introduced us, she treated me like a parasite. I remember the first time I went to her house for tea. She looked at my Volvo, the safest car on the market, which I love, and wrinkled her nose. "Oh," she said, "is that safe to drive on the highway? It looks so used." "It gets me from A to B, Patricia," I said politely. "I suppose," she sniffed. "Just park it around the back, would you?" The neighbors are particular about the aesthetic. For 3 years, it has been a constant barrage of microaggression. "Elena, dear, don't touch that vase. It's Ming. If you break it, you'll be paying it off until you're 80. Elena, are you sure you want the lobster? The chicken is much more within your bracket. James, are you sure she's the one? She's so plain. You need a wife who can navigate society, not someone who looks like she cleans the library." I never fought back. I sat there. I drank her tea. I let her think she was the queen. Why? Because silence is information, and information is leverage. While she was busy judging my shoes, I was busy noticing the foreclosure notices she tried to hide under piles of magazines. While she was bragging about her investments, I was running background checks on her assets because James was worried about her gambling habits. I knew everything. I knew her trust fund was drying up. I knew she had leveraged the family estate 3 times over. I knew she was terrified that James marrying a poor girl meant there would be no fresh injection of cash into the family. She thought I was the gold digger. The irony was so rich I could taste it. But tonight was the engagement dinner. This was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, Patricia had decided to turn it into a public execution. The dinner was held at the Gilded Lily, a private dining club downtown that smells of old leather and older money. The room was dimly lit by chandeliers that hadn't been dusted since the Reagan administration. The table was set with heavy silver and linens so starched they felt like cardboard. Patricia had invited everyone: her bridge club, her distant cousins, her lawyer, even her ex-husband's new wife, just to show off. She sat me at the far end of the table, away from James, sandwiched between her deaf Aunt Mildred and a woman named Excessive Botox Brenda, who kept asking me if I knew how to use a fish fork. "So, Elena," Brenda asked loudly, poking at her salad, "Patricia tells me you do computer things? Is that like data entry?" "Something like that," I said, cutting my endive. "Well, it's good, honest work," Brenda said condescendingly. "Not everyone can be a CEO. Someone has to type the emails." Patricia heard this from the other end of the table and laughed. "Exactly, Brenda. We keep telling James that Elena is very supportive. She's domestic. She'll be great at managing the staff, assuming she doesn't try to unionize them." The table erupted in laughter. James stood up. "Mother, that's enough." "Sit down, James," Patricia snapped. "I'm just teasing. You millennials are so sensitive. Elena knows I'm joking. Don't you, Elena?" She looked at me. I placed my knife and fork down. Perfectly parallel. "I think your definition of a joke differs from mine, Patricia," I said calmly. My voice didn't waver. "Oh, listen to her," Patricia crowed. "She's finding her voice. How adorable. Did you learn that from a self-help book? How to Marry Rich in 10 Days? The waiter arrived with the main course. Filet mignon for everyone. Except me. The waiter placed a plate of boiled chicken in front of me. I looked up at him. He looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he whispered. "The hostess. She specified a special menu for you." I looked at Patricia. She was beaming. "I took the liberty of ordering for you, dear," she called out. "I know you're not used to rich foods. Steak can be so heavy if you grew up on whatever it is your people eat. Casseroles? This is better for your digestion." It was a power move. A petty, childish, disgusting power move. James looked like he was about to flip the table. I put a hand up to stop him. I looked at the boiled chicken. Then I looked at Patricia. "Thank you, Patricia," I said. "It was very thoughtful of you to consider my constitution." "You're welcome," she smirked. "Now, before we eat, there is a small matter of business." She signaled to the man sitting to her right. "Mr. Henderson, the family lawyer." Mr. Henderson was a relic. He had been managing the Vanderbilt estate for 40 years. He looked tired. He was clutching a leather folio like a life preserver. "Patricia," Mr. Henderson whispered, "maybe this isn't the time." "Nonsense, Arthur," Patricia announced. "We are all family here, or we will be soon. There are no secrets." She stood up again. The spoon hit the glass. "This brings us back to the toast, the insults, the charity comment." But she wasn't done. She reached into Mr. Henderson's folio and pulled out a thick document. She threw it onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy thud, knocking over a salt shaker. "This," Patricia declared, "is a prenuptial agreement." She looked at me with pure venom. "James is too polite to ask. He's blinded by lust. But as the matriarch of this family, it is my duty to protect the Vanderbilt legacy." She walked around the table, dragging her finger along the wood, until she stood right behind my chair. She leaned down. I could smell her perfume, something floral and cloying, trying to mask the scent of gin. "You will sign this, Elena," she whispered loudly enough for the room to hear. "Tonight, before you eat your chicken. It states that in the event of a divorce, you get nothing. No alimony, no access to the trust, no claim on the house. You leave with exactly what you came with, which, let's be honest, is zero. End quote. James stood up so fast his chair fell over. Mom, this is insane. I'm not asking her to sign that. You don't have a choice, Patricia screamed, losing her composure for the first time. I control the trust, James. If you marry this pauper without protection, I will cut you off. Do you hear me? Not a penny. She turned back to me. Well, Elena, are you going to sign? Or are you going to admit that you're only here for the payout? She uncapped a gold fountain pen and slammed it onto the table next to my plate. Sign it. Prove to us you aren't a gold digger. The room was frozen. 50 pairs of eyes were glued to me. Brenda was holding her breath. The waiter was backing away into the shadows. I looked at the document. I looked at the pen. Then, I looked at Mr. Henderson, the lawyer. He was shaking his head slightly, looking pale. He knew something Patricia didn't. He knew who he had been emailing for the past week regarding the Apex Capital acquisition of his firm. I picked up the pen. Patricia's eyes lit up with triumph. She thought she had won. I twirled the pen in my fingers. Patricia, I said softly, I have a question. What? She snapped. Don't tell me you need a lawyer to read it. It's simple English. No, I said. I'm wondering. Did you read it? Of course I did. Did you read the financial disclosure appendix? I asked. The part where it lists the assets being protected? Patricia frowned. It lists everything. The house, the investments. Right, I said. But usually a prenup is designed to protect the wealthier party. I stood up. I didn't rush. I smoothed my trousers. I picked up the document. Mr. Henderson, I said, turning to the trembling lawyer. Would you like to explain to Patricia why this document is legally redundant? Mr. Henderson coughed. He tried to stand, but his legs seemed to fail him. Patricia, Mr. Henderson croaked. I advised against this. Why? Patricia demanded. She's broke. We have millions. Actually, a deep voice boomed from the entrance of the dining room. We all turned. Walking into the room were two men in dark suits. One of them I recognized immediately. It was George Sterling, the CEO of Sterling & Co., the bank that managed the Vanderbilt estate. Patricia gasped. George, what are you doing here? Did you come for the celebration? George didn't smile. He walked straight past Patricia. He walked straight past James. He walked right up to me. He extended his hand. Miss Vance, George said respectfully. My apologies for the interruption, but your office alerted us that there might be a coerced signature happening tonight. We wanted to ensure your interests were protected. Patricia looked between us, her mouth hanging open. Her false eyelashes fluttered rapidly. Ms. Vance? Patricia stammered. You mean Elena? Why are you shaking her hand? She's a nobody. George turned to Patricia. His face was stone cold. Patricia, George said. Miss Elena Vance is the majority shareholder of Apex Capital. Last month, Apex Capital acquired a controlling stake in Sterling & Co. He paused for effect. Miss Vance isn't just a nobody, Patricia. She is effectively my boss and yours. The sound of a fork hitting a plate echoed like a gunshot. It was Brenda. She had dropped her utensil. Patricia's face drained of all color. The rouge on her cheeks stood out like clown makeup against her pale skin. What? She whispered. That's impossible. She drives a Volvo. I stepped forward. I took the prenup from the table. Mr. Henderson, I said, please read the liabilities section of Patricia's financial disclosure aloud. For the room. Mr. Henderson wiped sweat from his forehead. He opened his copy of the folder. Yes. The Vanderbilt estate currently carries a second and third mortgage totaling $4 million. The liquid cash in the family trust is negative $50,000 due to overdraft fees. I looked at Patricia. You're broke, Patricia, I stated. It wasn't a question. It was a diagnosis. I am not, she shrieked. I have assets. I have the Hamptons house, which you haven't paid taxes on in 2 years. I corrected her. I know, because I bought the tax lien last week. The silence in the room was absolute. It was vacuum sealed. James looked at me, shocked but smiling. He knew I had money. He didn't know I had bought his mother's debt. You You bought my debt? Patricia wheezed. She grabbed the back of her chair for support. I did, I said calmly. I was planning to forgive it. As a wedding gift. I thought it would be a nice way to start our family life. A clean slate. I held up the prenup she had thrown at me. But then, I continued, my voice dropping an octave, becoming colder, harder. You called me a gold digger. You served me boiled chicken at my own engagement party. And you tried to bully me into signing away my rights. I ripped the prenup in half. The sound of the tearing paper was the only noise in the room. Rip. I ripped it again. So, here is the new reality, Patricia. I tossed the confetti-like pieces of paper onto her plate, right next to her uneaten filet mignon. I don't need your money. I make more in a quarterly dividend than this entire family has generated in the last decade. I stepped closer to her. She shrank back. And as the holder of the lien on your house, and the primary investor in the bank that holds your credit cards, I suggest you sit down, eat your steak, and never, ever, speak to me with that tone again. Patricia looked at George. She looked at Mr. Henderson. They both looked away. They knew where the power lay. She looked at her friends. Brenda was pretending to be fascinated by the tablecloth. Patricia's lip quivered. I didn't know, she whispered. That, I said, is exactly the problem. You judged the book by the cover. And now, the book is closing. I turned to James. I'm leaving, I said. This chicken is dry, and the company is stale. Are you coming? James didn't hesitate. He stood up, threw his napkin on the table, and walked to my side. Coming, he said. He looked at his mother. Mom, James said. Don't call us. We started to walk out. But Patricia couldn't let it end with dignity. She had to try one last desperate play. Wait! She screamed. Elena, wait! We stopped. She ran over to us, grabbing my arm. Elena, please, you can't leave me with the debt. They'll foreclose. I'll lose the house. I'm your mother-in-law. I looked at her hand on my sleeve. I looked at it until she let go. Technically, I said, you're just a debtor, and I'm the creditor. Please, she begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. We're family. I was just protecting the family. You have to understand. I do understand, I said. You were protecting your money, or what you thought was your money. I leaned in close. So let me protect mine. What does that mean? She sobbed. Are you going to evict me? I haven't decided yet, I lied. I had already instructed George to start the proceedings if she caused a scene. She just did. But for now, I said, you can start by paying for this dinner. The full bill, including the champagne you drank to toast my poverty. I turned to the waiter who had brought me the chicken. Put everything on Patricia's tab, I said, and add a 20% tip for yourself. You've had to put up with a lot tonight. The waiter grinned. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Patricia stood there in the middle of the dining room, weeping, surrounded by the wreckage of her social standing. Her friends were already whispering. Her lawyer was packing his bags. I walked out of the Gilded Lily with James, into the cool night air. My Volvo was parked right out front. The valet had brought it up. It looked beautiful. We eloped 2 weeks later in Italy. Just me, James, and a few close friends. It was perfect. No sequins, no drama. As for Patricia, I didn't evict her immediately. That would be too messy. Instead, I had Apex Capital restructure the terms of her loan. She's on a strict payment plan now. She had to sell the Hamptons house to cover the arrears. She had to fire her staff. And the best part? Every month, when she writes that check to the bank, she knows exactly whose pocket it's going into. She sends me letters sometimes. Apologies. Invitations to lunch. I don't open them. I just file them away. Silence, after all, is the most expensive luxury of all. If you enjoyed this story of stealth, wealth, and karma, hit that like button and subscribe. And remember, never assume the person in the quiet corner is weak. They might just own the building you're standing in. See you in the next one.